Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're going to be taking a look at Total War Warhammer 3's newest DLC, Shadow of Change, and we'll be focused on Yuan and the Grand Cathay faction. But before we hop into things, I do want to announce that this is going to be our first and final preview for the Shadow of Change DLC. I won't be covering the DLC beyond this video. We'll showcase Grand Cathay's changes and Yuan's faction in its entirety. In this video, we won't be playing any turns, but we'll cover all aspects of his faction, as well as some of the changes that's happening to Grand Cathay in the background for the patch 4.0. Now, the reason why I won't be covering this DLC has multiple reasons, price obviously being one of it. For me personally, the price doesn't affect me because as a content partner, we get the games for free, we get the games early. So to increase the price to $25, I'm in the US here, so be going with that price. Definitely feels very expensive for the content that's provided, but more than that, I personally don't like the direction of the content. The changes to Harmony, for example, in this patch is not one that I support, and something that I voiced out to CA prior to the release of the DLC. We got to try the DLC quite early on. You might even find some of our content creator names in the credit of this DLC, much like the last one. But regardless of that, Harmony changes, simplifying the game, and just the general pacing of the patch, as well as the choice of the Lord. I was fully expecting Monkey King, but it seems like we got Yuan, a third Dragon Lord. He is a ton of fun, don't get me wrong. The mechanics are fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with his faction design, but it's just not the Lord I was expecting. I think it's a huge missed opportunity, but then again, missed opportunities and marketing of CA is definitely goes hand in hand. Anyhow, let's not talk about that. Let's cover the game. So, hopping into a campaign here, if we go to Realm of Chaos, the balance of Yin Yang to achieve harmony, which confers powerful effects across the provinces, that's no longer true. It's no longer a faction-wide mechanic. It's going to be localized to each province, and I'll show what I mean by that, but that's a huge change for the faction. It's a faction that's sold on the idea of maintaining harmony, and it does get tedious. I understand it's not for everyone, which is why they simplified it. People don't like to think about which reform they can pick or technology they can pick, and then which characters they can recruit, how to recruit agents to balance that, which buildings to queue up. It does get tedious. I understand. A lot of players don't want to play a game like that, but I'm not one of those players. I think Warhammer 3 as a whole, it's already super simplified. It's probably the easiest Total War game to date, in my opinion, just with the sheer number of buffs you can add up to characters and how these DLC factions are super overpowered. For example, Chaos Dwarves is just a joke. They're so much better than the other factions, and it's very simple to play, and they're making it even easier, and I'm not sure I like that direction for the game. I prefer to play something a bit more challenging. I think that's how I see it. We'll be playing as Grand Cathay here, new Dragon Lord in Yuan, the Jade Dragon. You can see his faction effect. He will gain visibility with existing trade agreement with any faction. This will extend his diplomatic vision. There's pros and cons to this. The pro is that you have a farther reach early on, and you can get multiple trade agreement, which supplies money to build up your faction. But it also gives you visibility of foreign factions that might declare war on you. They're hostile or aggressive factions, so there are pros and cons to that. You do get 20 points of diplomatic relation with Grand Cathay. This is more thematic. I don't think 20 points will do much. Maybe keep you out of some potential early wars, but most Grand Cathay factions are pretty friendly, and you're not going to run into that problem. And the 20 points not going to help with Confederation, which is really what you want with the other minor factions as well as your two siblings. I think that aspect for Grand Cathay is really lacking. We saw a pretty good mechanic with Confederation with the Chaos Dwarfs. That way you can get pretty much all the legendary lore to play around with. Here, it's very difficult to confederate your siblings. We had a campaign on Immortal Empires that lasted hundreds of turns where we had the entire map almost painted, and we cannot confederate our sibling with only one province left. It's just a bit sad how that works. Speaking of provinces, there is a really good scaling effect for his research rate, 5% for each provincial capital, and gaining access to a couple provincial capitals early on is very important. You want at least 4 to kind of maximize your mechanic, which we'll talk about very soon. You also get +2 capacity for Astromancers. There's a focus on magic. Yuan's a very powerful magic user, which is why his Lord effect also has the additional 25 points of Wind of Magic Reserve. The upkeep cost discount for Onyx Crowman, Jade Lion, and Jet Lion are not that great in my opinion. These are nice flavor units added in on this DLC. They fit niche roles in each army. Onyx Crowman, basically just a good chase down unit, a harasser of the back line. They're very fragile. They do fill a role of flying or cheap flying unit for Grand Cathay's roster, but mainly you'll be fighting with whatever you've been fighting before. You might add a few unit here or there. The Lions are okay unit. Jade Lion's more aggressive. Jet Lion's more of a magic debuff. Jade Lion has 2 uses of a Jade Dragon Breath. It's the damage ability, and Jet Lion has, I think, Missile Mirror. Basically, you can shut down ranged enemies, and you also have some debuff against enemy magic. I don't think I'll be covering the unit in detail, the stats, but in general, that's kind of what these new units does. There's also the Jungle War Drum, which is not listed in the original blog post, and they made it really confusing, but essentially it's a buffing unit. For those who play Total War 3 Kingdom, you can think of them as the Nundrol Elephants with 3 different songs. In this case, the Jungle War Drum, it's a very weak unit. It's not very aggressive. It's not like an elephant. You're basically only on mount. And you get 2 default drum songs, I guess, or effects. One boosts some sort of defensive stat, one boosts offensive stat. And then there's a Regiment of Renown version of the Jungle War Drum, the Jade version, and that has an additional 3rd song. And in addition to being a passive boost to a nearby unit, these unit, Jungle War Drum, count both as yin and yang unit. So you can get synergies with whatever type of units around them, and they also provide a 25% additional amplifier for your harmony effect. So they fit a unique role in boosting. Thematically, they also look great. They can definitely fit in any army comp, but it does take 1 unit position away, and they're not very strong themselves. Aside from that, we're going to start out at the corner of the map, and that's going to be a pretty favorable starting position. Grand Cathay all around us. We do want to gain control. You're now in a race with your 2 other siblings to grab as much land as possible, but the core mission objective is to build relays at key locations around the map so that you can empower the Wuxing Compass, which is unique to you. The other 2 siblings still have the 4-directional Wuxing Compass, but for Yuan, he has an 8-directional Wuxing Compass, and it's core to his campaign in Realm of Chaos. I believe you have to build a relay here, 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 and here. Those 4 points, each time you build a relay, which is going to be a special building unique to your faction that you can build once you gain control of that provincial capital, you'll trigger a quest battle against the Lizardmen, and once you completed all 4, you get your final quest battle, which completes the campaign, and that's going to happen outside of Weijing over here. So you don't have to go too far, but you do have to maneuver through the mountains and gain control over here for one of the relays and head down to Dragon Fame Mount to get another one. Aside from that, both of the other 2 relays are within Grand Cathay. So let's hop into the campaign, check out the cinematic and the flyby, and talk about the faction mechanic in more detail.
An ancient power stirs in the land of dragons, a force of jade and steel, deep in the heart of the central provinces. Wei Jin, the jewel in the crown of the Celestial Empire, home to the great Wuxing Compass. Watched over by its vigilant guardian, the Jade Dragon, master of the meteor winds. The architect of Grand Cathay's destiny. Yet as light turns to darkness, he schemes, commanding a vast network of unrelenting spies. No lies go undetected. No whispers go unheard. The dragon's eyes are everywhere. Where the rivers meet, Shang-Wu lies. Yuan Bo has left behind his courtly duties and clandestine methods and taken to the field. A tide of greenskins has descended upon the riverlands like a flood, despoiling all in their wake. They are an intolerable presence that must be repelled to ensure the safety of the realm, lest the greenskin threat advance deeper inland. Once the incursion is resolved, loftier goals can be sought to ensure the dominance of Grand Cathay in perpetuity. But there is much to do, and little room for error. With the power of the Jade Court at his call, Yuan Bo sallies forth.
I am the governor of the Jade Court. Harmony will be restored, no matter the cost.
And speaking of harmony, let's take a look at how harmony has been changed. So first you notice there's no harmony on top. And if we hop over to something familiar like the tech tree, there is no harmony on any of these, even though some still have the name Yin and Yang. There just isn't any harmony here at all. Some of these have been modified to take into account of the new units and some of the new effect, but most of this is unchanged. Now I know some of this still, young units still exist, young buildings still exist, and that's basically where you'll find harmony. When you open up the province, notice here, that is harmony. You can also go into building browser. That is harmony. That's it. And it's per province. It's not spread across your faction anymore. Each province will have their own harmony. And whereas before, you kind of want to stay in the middle for the bonuses, and you're penalized when you're not in harmony, it's no longer the case. If you're a couple points in the young side, you get a bit of different bonus. You get a few more recruitment rank, you get a few more recruitment spot, and cheaper recruitment, faster research rate. You make that worse, and guess what? Your research rate goes up. Your recruitment cost goes down. Your rank goes up. And basically, it's your choice. You can be very positively young and enjoy huge discounts to recruitment, higher starting rank, and increase local recruitment capacity, and a little bit of research rate on top. So what happened to Cathay wants to stay in harmony? And then on the inside, you get increased growth. You get cheaper construction costs. You get control all the way up to -1 construction time for all buildings, minimum 1 turn in the province, 30 point of growth, and -20% construction costs for all building, and then +3 control. So early on, it seems like you're rewarded to go heavily into in so that you can build up your province cheaply. There's no punishment for it. Like the neutral bonus, if you take a look at it, if you are in harmony, what do you get? You get cheaper upkeep for armies in the province. That's not going to matter for provinces you start out with, because you're not going to have any armies in those areas. And those armies get 20% additional campaign movement range. So early on, sure, if you start out with only one province and you have one army, you try to expand with that army, getting additional movement range, cheaper upkeep when you're standing inside that province, and the increase in income, certainly this might be better. And if you want to look at some of the later transitions, once you're done with all the growth, once you're done with all the control building, and you want to come back and take advantage of 15% increase in income, then you end up in harmony. But throughout the process, and even for some military recruitment center, you can make a very easy argument that young is going to be so much better for you, because for those military centers, you have 30% recruitment costs. You're not going to have that many more economy buildings in that location because you're so focused on building units in those locations. So what happened to harmony? There's no negative. Everything's positive. You don't have to think about this. If you don't see the little symbol on top, would you play any differently? you have the choices between the buildings. You can't switch them between one another anymore. The effect on them is still the same. The construction discount on the young building feels pointless. Used to be you want to build this first and then convert it over to the invariant. Once you're done building everything, you gain a boost to your income. But now you can just stick with the increased income very early on because you are going to end up with a bigger construction cost discount just by being in the inside. So why even build this? It makes no sense. Honestly, it just makes no sense why they changed this. And trust me, I told them this when I played it after seeing the change. And I don't understand why this has been marginalized so much. I can understand players complaining about, oh, I had to think about recruiting an agent and then deleting an agent. It can get tedious. Sure, I played a full Immortal Empires campaign where we, essentially almost painted the map. It does get tedious, but it's kind of rewarding when you stay in balance. Now it feels like it doesn't matter. It's afterthought. For a faction that, talk about balance all the time, it just feels wrong. But that aside, there are good things about this DLC. If you do decide to buy it and play it, there are things you're going to enjoy. Yuan as a lord, absolutely strong. DLC power creep. We now have quest battles. Well, actually, no. Correction. There is a quest battle for Yuan for his Dragon Fang sword, which supposedly comes from the Celestial Dragon's own teeth. It's his unique weapon. And you get a quest battle for this. There's a quest mission for his armor. For the other two Grand Cathay Lord, they both have missions for both their items. And their higher tier item is just the Verbrace, whatever the mount is on their back. And it's not a super good effect, very generic. I think the effects are just afterthoughts. But essentially there's quests now. There's 2 quest missions for the previous 2 dragon siblings, and there's a quest mission and a quest battle for Yuan for the DLC. So that's a nice change, but honestly, something that should have been there on launch. People bought the game thinking that all the factions are finished, but clearly things are still being worked on. I think a year and a half now into the cycle, and with this DLC and this rework, we do get some quest, even though I would argue the 2 quest missions for the other 2 siblings, it's not as good as getting a quest battle in this case. The effects are quite nice. You can see some of the bonuses you get with the ability on the armor as well as the ability on the weapon, but that's nothing compared to his skills. Yuan is the executioner, so he has the judge, which extends his ability, the Emperor's Executioner, which automatically kills an enemy lord or hero if they're below 20% health. It's an execute move. It's nuts, because you can increase the usage of this and increase the range with Judge. And then for Jury, you can reduce the cooldown and then increase the usage again. And then for Executioner, you increase the threshold from 20% health to 33% health. So for a lot of those really tough lord with insanely high melee defense stat, get your range unit, shoot them a couple times, get it to 1/3 health, click this one button, and they just die. And it's pretty strong. Obviously, the extra use is going to be good on those hero units that's coming in battle. There's not going to be that many targets for this. It's not against any single entity. I think it's just against Lord and heroes. So that is a restriction on this. But overall, very powerful set of abilities for Yuan as a specialty anti-Lord. I'm sure those who play multiplayer will have fun with him. And then we have his unique line here after rank 12. You can see increased rank for dragon-blooded Shugengans. There's also the new Lord type, which we can take a look a bit later. It's going to be a melee Lord focused on defense. There's a pretty powerful AoE defense ability, I think, that raises nearby units melee defense by 40 points, as well as 20% damage resistance, or physical resistance, I think. And that's just basically a frontline general making up for Lord Magistrate's, poor performance on the battlefield. We have Bureaucrats, so increased control, decreased construction costs, decreased construction time. That's going to be the main focus for Yuan. Basically staying on theme, diplomatic relations, increased leadership, increase the effect of the leadership when in human form, cheaper upkeep in own territory, faster movement in own territory, and better replenishment in own territory. And then we have the Overseer, which increases a chance for all Astromancers, which is why we get +2 capacity, and then we get +2 more here. There's no longer yin yang on Astromancer, so you could ignore that aspect. All the characters are neutral now. You only have them on buildings, which is a real shame in my opinion. And then finally we have Closest to the Heavens. Spell intensity goes up because, you know, very heavy emphasis on Spellcaster. We have a very mixed bag of spells. There's a lot of lores that he can access, and you can take a quick look down. Rolling Skies, the passive Power of In for debuff, and then Jade Shield. These are all very passive. The Comet of Castadora, Talent of the Night, both very good damage abilities given to him. So definitely good magic caster. There's also new units that kind of amplify that with the 2 Lion unit. The Jade Lion in particular is more offensive and will boost your spell intensity as well, whereas the Jet Lion is more defensive and comes with 2 uses of the Mirror Missile to kind of counter the enemy range units as well as enemy spellcasters. Actually, not spellcasters. There's an increase to miscast chance that has that passive, but the Jade Lion's more about offensive stats. I'm not going to take a look at all the units in detail. The Jade Conduit for power recharge is basically what this is designed for. Comes with 2 uses of a bound spell, Jade Lion's Breath. It's a little cone-shaped damage ability. It's alright, it's nothing too crazy. And then the other new unit, the Onyx Crowmen, just a fast harassment unit. It's fine. It fills a gap in the Grand Cathay roster, given that they don't have any cheap flyers, especially that's fast and numerous, so you can use this to kind of chase down. Eye of the Empress, help you reveal farther, so good against enemy stock unit, against Skavens in particular. Overall, just a pretty cheap unit to use. The core of your army is going to be very similar, as mentioned before. If we look at Lords, the new Lord is called Celestial General. These guys, let's pop one out.
Celestial General.
Take a look at them. They look very cool. Big hammer. And we can see some of the bonuses you can expect. There's 2 mounts, Warhorse, J. Loma. And they basically have this attribute. You're going to see a very similar attribute that will be picked up from one of the Matter Estates, which we'll take a look at. It's the core mechanic, and these are mutually exclusive. You basically unlock different bonuses for your army. I think these are probably going to be the go-to lords for Grand Cathay armies if you're not focused on spellcasting. Because if you're focused on spellcasting, you wouldn't want these. But for regular armies, they're going to be much better than Lord Magistrates, and that's kind of the role they are designed to be. Lord of Grand Cathay is the ability I'm talking about. It's a 16-second duration, massive defensive boost in nearby areas, and that's definitely very good for this type of Lord, kind of missing in the Grand Cathay roster. Good to see that void filled. And then let's talk about the campaign and his faction mechanic. So the campaign, as we mentioned, is about building these relays. And these relays are additional points on his Wuxing Compass, whereas all other Cathay factions so far has 4 points, which are unlocked here. They still work the same. You have 4 additional points, which are unlocked once you build these Astromatic Relay landmark buildings. They're a special landmark building just for your faction, and you can build them at these locations, which you can click and see. This is the one that's really, really far, but we already pointed them out on the map earlier. And once you built the relay at these locations, you will trigger a quest battle against the Lizardmen. After you fought all 4 and you built the last one, or actually when you build the last one, you'll get the grand finale quest battle that will complete the campaign. And these points will have different bonuses that you can use throughout your campaign. Some will have reserve effect, which is why they're shown on the left, and some will not. In this case, this has an active and a reserve effect of increasing growth and focusing on construction and building up. Broken Land is focused on unit recruitment experience as well as starting rank. And then we have Dragon River, which does not have a reserve effect. You have to be in the capital city of Weijing. Characters become immortal, and attrition drops 75% from all sources. This one's actually pretty nice, which is why it doesn't have a reserve effect in my opinion. And then for the Tower of Sheer, we get increased Winds of Magic bonuses. And that's pretty much the campaign as a whole. Your goal is to build these 4 relays and fight these quest battles. And you beat the Lizardmen trying to break up the Dragon Emperor's plan. And then you win the campaign. You're doing this for Papa. And then for his faction unique mechanic, the Matters of State. It's these two resources on top, steel and stone. And these are tokens. This is actually a very well designed mechanic in my opinion, because it actually forces you to use pretty much all of these instead of focusing on a few very powerful ones, because it's about balance, and for once something is getting balanced instead of the yin yang. You start out with 2 tokens each. You need to use the tokens to convert them to the other token. For example, if we want to use Rush Construction, which speeds up or instantly finishes construction in any of your settlements. So in this case, we don't have anything there. Let's say we want to build this, we want to upgrade that, and then we hop over to our Matters of State. We hit Rush Construction, we hit Shangwu, perform, and those buildings are instantly done. On top of that, our 2 stone token, which were used to do this Matter of State, is now queued up as pending tokens for the other type. So whenever you use one type, they're shifted to the other type and they become pending. And it'll take 5 turns for the pending tokens to become usable. If you win a fight, then you can speed up those turns by 1. So essentially, winning 5 battles will get those tokens available immediately. So in a sense, farming rebels might become a very viable strategy to use Matters of State frequently, because it's very hard to get new tokens. You can get up to 4 additional tokens, and the way you do that is by using the actions of Commercial District and Fortress District, which each cost 4. So this is why you start out thinking, do I want a Fortress City early on, or do I want a Commercial District early on? And that's going to dictate which side of the action you want to start things off with, because you want to get to those 4 cost actions as quickly as possible so you have more tokens to play around with. You start with 4, you can get 4 more. At the very end, you can get 8, which enable you to use the most powerful one, command the lesser court. It's a balanced action. You must have 4 of each, so you got to tweak and play around with these actions so you get 4 on each side. And the whole idea behind this is that you have to kind of use them at different costs, space them out, and try to take on these different actions. And this forces you to use all of them, which is a great design in my opinion, because a lot of these faction mechanics where you have choices like this, you just stick to one that's really powerful and just keep using it. And we'll go over all these. And to explain what I mean by thinking about if you want a Commercial District versus a Fortress City, Commercial District is a bonus you can use to any settlement that you have that's tier 3 or higher. And once you dictate that new province to be a Commercial District, all its infrastructure and resource buildings will get additional bonuses forever. And if you call it a Fortress City, then that city's military and defense buildings will get bonuses forever. So recruitment centers become Fortress Cities, economic centers become Commercial Districts. And early on, depending on your playstyle, personally, I would probably go for Commercial District. And it doesn't matter which token you're creating, right? If you go Commercial District and you're creating a stone token, you can just use that and it shifts over to become a steel token afterwards. So you're just trying to increase the total number of token in rotation, and then you're picking out different actions at different costs so that you have the right amount of token that you want to use in the future for your next action. And that's kind of how you play around with Matters of State. It does take a bit of planning ahead to use well. But these 2 are the core actions to increase your token. You can get up to 4 more, and that ends up with 8. And we'll take a look at what each can do, starting with all the steel actions. Levy the provinces. Any army you have, you can increase the recruitment by 1 turn. So instantly 1 turn completed for ongoing recruitment, speeding up when you can get troops. Structure operation. Your next hero action is guaranteed to succeed. These 2 are pretty nice. I think some of the lower cost options are made, into very useful ones so that you can use them and shift tokens around much easier. Like right now I can use one of these as well and just basically have both sets of tokens queued up on the other side. Then at 3 cost, we have Astromantic Boon, which basically increases a bunch of Winds of Magic related bonuses. Diplomatic Deadlock. Any army that you have, you can select them, and then that army is immune to diplomatic penalties from trespassing. Not very useful. Supply line operations, probably the go-to 3 cost deal. You get enable replenishment in foreign territories, increase movement by 20% for that army, plus 10 leadership if you're in foreign territory, plus 50% ammo. So when you're invading, when you're attacking another faction, all these are going to be true, and this is what you want. How long they stay active is a good question, actually. It will vary by the action, and it's a shame it's not listed here. I don't have it off the top of my head, but some of these, they last different amounts, and some effect lasts forever. So then we have Fortress City, which we covered, and then for reserve conscription, the target settlement garrisons deploy. This one's really nice and really interesting, where you can build yourself a fortress city. You can add some defensive garrison buildings in there, so you have a pretty big garrison in this city, and then you can spawn this garrison onto the map as an army using reserve conscription. So it pops onto the map, you can use it to fight, but it's going to be under constant attrition until it fully disbands. So it's a nice little way to get a temporary boost using your Matters of State. And then Celestial Intervention, as the name suggests, this is the big meteor ability that you can have. So for this, you can see the attribute 360 missile block for all units, increased missile block chance. We saw this kind of as a choice on the new Lord. So these bonuses are also here. You also get access to Celestial Intervention even if you didn't pick that direction on the Wuxing Compass, which is usually how you get it. And you usually only get it within Grand Cathay land, but in this case, if you tag the army with this Matter of State, they get it, and they get +3 uses of it. It's a very powerful, small area damage spell, and then you also get 45% speed for all units in the army. Also very powerful, which is why it's 6 cost. Foreign Stratum, also very powerful. You pick any neutral or ally faction, and you can instantly borrow one of their armies as long as it's not their faction leader's army, and you can keep it as long as you don't go to war with that faction. So pretty neat. The Meteor Gambit, you can reset every single army's movement after you use them this turn. So finish your turn, have all your armies do their thing, and then you restore their movement range. Now this is obviously a very powerful one, which is why it costs 7 steel. The only thing that bothers me is there's no 7 stone action, which makes this really imbalanced. It just looks slightly off. I don't understand why they couldn't have invented another one just to keep things balanced. And looking at stone, we have Crackdown, which targets any settlement and resets its control and corruption back to 0. Very useful, even though I think spawning rebellions might be a very viable strategy. And also, once you gain control of the Grand Bastion, there's army north of that you can constantly fight and farm to kind of reset your pending tokens. Rust Construction, we just used it and then commissioned the Artisans. You get 4 random magic items or auxiliaries. Pretty cool, especially since you can combine them or even salvage them if you don't want them. And then Harmonic Restructuring, you can pick any settlement you have and you can instantly swap their yin-yang equivalent buildings. This one feels kind of bad for 3 cost because this used to be a mechanic. Certainly, if you have a very high level building, maybe you just captured it and it just has the wrong set of buildings, you want to change it, this could be a way you do it, but I don't see why you wouldn't want the Commission the Artisan for 3 costs. Commercial District, already covered this. Masters of the Jade Court, pick any army, give that lord 5,000 experience. Mask of Jade, you reset your diplomatic reliability to very high. This has to do with trustworthy, and you also can't be reduced this turn. So if you're going to do any sort of deal breaking, this is the turn to do it. If you're going to do any sort of confederation, this is the turn to do it. Or if you've already done it, you can reset your diplomatic reliability here and then continue to do another round of it without hurting your diplomatic standing. It's quite powerful. And then Celestial Emissary, pick any settlement that you have. You get an elite Astromancer hero with a unique trait. I have not tried this, so I don't know what the elite trait is, or the unique trait is, and whether the elite means you get some levels on it or not. But essentially, you're going to get a very special Astromancer. And then Fisca Treaty, this is where you sap the income from an allied faction for 20 turns. Every faction has sort of these background income, 2,500. You get that for 20 turns per use of this on allied factions. So if you have a bunch of allies and you want to steal their money, which I guess is fine given how the game is designed, allies are super weak and they become weaker in terms of AI action the second they become your ally, which is a bit sad with the potential system that they're using for difficulty. So don't really depend on your allies, and taking their money definitely could work here, especially if you're keeping like a pet ally faction. Let's say one of your siblings back in Grand Cathay that you're just waiting to confederate. Maybe this is the way. Like I said, real shame there's no 7 cost action to keep things balanced here. The costs don't even match up across the board. They really lost their way with the harmony aspect, in my opinion. Balance actions, battle harmony supremacy. All units in that army will count both as yin and yang, so basically you will get your yin yang passive in combat, even if you go with, let's say, an all-range army. And that's pretty nice. Then command the lesser courts. We already kind of covered this as the most powerful one. You need all the tokens available to you. You need them balanced beforehand to use. And essentially you get a set of powerful bonuses for the faction to choose from. You can only pick one, and that one stays active. And if you use it again, you can swap it to a different one, but only one active at any time. So that's Matter of State. It's a pretty neat set of actions for the faction, and that pretty much covers our overview of Yuanbo's faction here in the game for the DLC. And like I said, this is going to be our one and only preview for this DLC. Hope you guys understand, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!